Good morning. Welcome to the 15th session of Saturday Musings, and today's topic is parenting. Uh, today's topic is parenting, and as a young parent, even I'm looking forward to this session. We'll start the session with a keynote on the conscious parenting, followed by the panel discussion on the parenting challenges in 21st century. I would like to introduce you all to the professor, Ramya. She is the keynote speaker. Dr. Ramya Ranganathan is currently a visiting faculty at IIMB. She's the Electrical and Electronics Communication Engineering from IIT Madras and from MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Ramya has worked in the corporate world with the blue chip companies like ICICI, Infosys, and Citibank. As a part of understanding the person-work relationship, she studied organizational behavior at London Business School, and as a master as research as well as doctorate in management from London Business School. Professor Ramya has dedicated her life to helping people find joy and meaning through their work and has touched over 10,000 participants through various programs and courses over the past 8 years. Her style of teaching is unique in effortlessly blending intellectual left brain logic with intuitive right brain reflection. Her areas of expertise include organizational behavior, positive psychology, nurturing creativity, and excellence emotional intelligence, cultivating an innovative mindset, and career crafting. A warm welcome to you, ma'am.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. And today I'm here to talk with you, and have a discussion on a topic that I'm not at all qualified to talk about, which is conscious parenting. Okay, and I'd like to start with a poem, which is by Khalil Gibran, that has influenced me very deeply in my own journey of parenting. So this is titled On Children by Khalil Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees his mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So what is conscious parenting? So what is conscious parenting? An easier question perhaps would be to ask, what is unconscious parenting? In my opinion, unconscious parenting is when, instead of meeting the individual needs of our children, we project our own ideas and expectations onto them. We enter the parenting journey with visions of what it should be and judgments of what a good parent is and a good child is. Without even being aware of it, we land up imposing our ideas and beliefs onto our kids. And as a result of it, the parent-child relationship often numbs a child's spirit instead of enlivening it. We desperately want to do what we think is best for our children, but in trying to do this, we forget their right to be their own person and lead their life in accord with their spirit. So how can we become a more conscious parent? To be a conscious parent, we first need to accept that our own ego self is a messed up concoction of conditioning, and then continuously ask ourselves how we can play the role of a parent where our ego self takes a back seat. Being a conscious parent is to engage with our child mindfully in each moment so we can savor, appreciate, and enjoy the beauty of their innocent companionship without a need to own, control, or dominate them from a false sense of parental superiority. I have a disclaimer here that while I am speaking today about the ideals of conscious parenting, by no means am I claiming that I am a conscious parent all the time. I am work in progress, as are all of us. And each one of us on our journey of becoming a more and more a conscious parent, it's just part of a larger journey of becoming a more and more conscious human being. So what can we start doing in practical terms in order to become a more conscious parent? I'm going to share 4 ideas with you today. This is supposed to move. Can you help me move to the next slide? So, while the slide moves on to the next slide, I'll just let you know the first idea that I'm going to talk about is that we need to let go of our stuff. Now, what do we mean by our stuff? Okay, so how much of our beliefs and ideas and judgments and assumptions that we've picked up in our childhood, our fears and fantasies, and how much of this are we bringing into our interaction with our children and knowingly or unknowingly dumping them onto our children? Let's take an example here, okay? Let's take an example of the prescription checklists that all of us, okay, sorry, give us a minute here. Okay. So don't worry if the slides don't come on, I'll still tell you about it, okay? So let's take an example of, yeah, sure. Okay, so the example we'll use first is the prescription checklists that each one of us developed about what it means to be happy and successful and fulfilled. Thank you. In life, okay? So these could be checklists like, and we all have different versions of them, right? So study hard, get good marks, get good grades, go to college, get an advanced degree, 3 or 4 sometimes, get a good job, get married, get children, and then you'll be happy. So we've been taught this. Some of us have believed it to smaller and greater extents, and yet all of us know that these prescription checklists don't work out. They don't work out as they promised to, like this is the happily ever after solution. And yet, despite our own experience with these prescription checklists, for lack of anything better, we just dump these same checklists onto our children, telling them do this and this and this, and then you'll be happy, selling them these promises that were sold to us, not realizing that the child in front of us is already happy. We probably need to reverse something there, and we need to learn and ask the child, what is your checklist for being happy, if at all you have something, and why don't you teach me out here? Okay, let me give you other examples of stuff that we dump onto our children, our fears. Fears of everything. I'm just going to take an example here, our fear of failure. It's something, again, it's completely conditioning. Children don't have the fear of failure. We didn't have it when we were kids. We didn't even have a definition or judgment about what is failure, but we learned it. We were taught. We were conditioned by our parents, teachers, society, all of that. And today, a lot of us live our lives somewhat handicapped because we are afraid to fail. We are afraid to try new things. We are afraid to take risks. But the child, look at the child when the child learns to start walking. It tries something, it falls down. It doesn't call it a failure, it just tries again. It wasn't a good thing, bad thing, falling down. No, it was, we try again, fall down, try again. And that's the beautiful way in way the child is operating. And we then dump our fears and judgments about failure on the child and teach the child, you need to be afraid. This is a failure. This is a success, right? This needs to be avoided. This is a good thing. This is a bad thing. Okay, so there are endless examples of how we dump our stuff onto our children. But if we don't want to dump them first, we need to get rid of it. And that's what I mean by letting go of our stuff, okay? And the most important reason, however, to work on our stuff is that our conditioning obscures our ability to see the child for who he or she is. The more we get free from our own past conditioning, the more we liberate ourselves, and then we can see and relate to the child as they really are, not as how we imagine they are or should be. So the second idea I want to share with you is about operating in the now. Okay, so we've all heard this before. Present moment awareness, mindfulness, live in the present. Yeah, what does this mean and how does this translate into our parenting experiences? Okay, so the main battle here is that all of us have fantasies and imagination about how our child should behave, how it should play out, how we should have that awesome experience of bonding with the child or the child being good and this and that. And when reality unfolds in a way that is different from our fantasy, our expectation, that's when the battle starts. So it's 10:30 in the night, and let's assume you had a bedtime of 9 o'clock. Your kid is still awake. He's having a tantrum, or he's insisting, no, I'm not going to sleep now. So instead of being caught up in your mind of, but he should have slept at 9, and then I wanted to do this, and this was my plan, and my plan is all ruined, so this is a problem. What if you leave all of that, the thoughts, the baggage, right, and just enter that present moment and see the reality of the moment? What's unfolding then? That the child is cranky, the child is not sleeping. Okay, and you're there, the child is there, now what can you do about it? So living in the now is actually very empowering. That's also where we have our most power. Actually, that's the only place where we can actually be alive, because when we are functioning from the past, that's just our memory, rehashing old things. I wanted this, I should have done this, I was told this was good, I was told that was bad, all of that. It's just that. We are not present, and when we live in the future, it's again just plans and fantasies and dreams, again created in the mind. So entering the now, being present with the child and saying, what can I do here now? Okay. And this is not just about bad things also, right? So-called bad things, or when, I'll give you another example here from my own life. So my son had gone on a 6-day school excursion, and then when he was going to come back, I was really waiting for him to come back. So I had cooked all his favorite dishes, and I had made these fantasies in my mind about the happy reunion and how I'm going to listen to him about all the lovely things that happened, share his experiences, and I'd blocked my calendar to spend the next 2-3 days completely with him, because I'd been away from him, he'd been away from me for 6 days, and we would have all this bonding. So that was me and my story. And then the day arrives, and my son actually comes back from the school excursion. And here are all his dishes that I've prepared for him, but he just wants to have curd rice, if at all. Okay, and I want to spend time, I want to chat, I want to know, I want to bond. He's had so much of socialization and activity, he just wants to be left alone. He wants solitude. So what do I do in that moment? Do I make it a problem? Do I make it his wrongness? Do I say, you are uncaring and mean and unkind? I made all this for you. You need to appreciate all the effort I've put in and eat what I've cooked for you. You need to sit and talk with me. I have been waiting for you. All those are my needs. What does the child need? So can I change my needs in that moment? Can I actually embrace the child in that moment? In that moment, what he wants is curd rice. In that moment, what he wants is solitude. He wants me out of his room. And can I do that? Can I be that for him? And can I not make it a wrongness in his world, in his reality, or in my reality? Can I not look at myself as a failure? Oh, no, my son doesn't care for me. Oh, no. And can I not get into all this blame and make it a problem where there wasn't any problem? And that's what I mean by living in the now, okay? So trust me, whatever the situation, we always have enough resources to deal with just that one present moment. And then we deal with the next, and then we deal with the next, and we deal with the next, okay? So the third idea I want to share with you is about honoring the child's own knowing. So, will someone help me with this? So what do we mean by honoring the child's own knowing? Okay. I'm going to draw a little analogy here. So in 2006, when the tsunami had hit in Sri Lanka, so, there were all these human beings who had gone to the beach because of their plans and thinking and all of that, and they got into trouble. But the elephants actually sensed that there was some danger, and they ran away to safety, into the forest, into higher grounds. Their sense of instinct, their knowing, told them, move away from the ocean, and they did it. Now, this sense of knowing, call it instinct, call it the gut feeling, our connection with the earth, with our body, with other creatures. Animals have it, babies have it, children have it. We had it as babies and children, and slowly, 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 we condition ourselves, or we are conditioned out of it. And this is not something that needs to happen. It happened to a lot of us, but can we do less of that for our children, for the next generation? So can we try to honor their knowing and not invalidate it? How do we invalidate a child's knowing? So, babies know how much they need to eat and when they need to eat. A baby will unlatch from the mother's nipple once it's had enough. But we have our ideas, right? We've been told, maybe from a doctor, maybe from a book, maybe from our own parents, that no, this is the amount the baby needs to drink, this is the right thing. How can anything be right every day at the same time for every baby? But whatever it is, we go with that and then we try to force it. And the baby starts, every time we invalidate a baby's choice and knowing or a child's choice and knowing, our children, they actually love us so much, they look up to us so much, they respect us so much, that in that love, they give up their knowing. In fact, we all did this as children. In our extreme love for our parents, we're like, okay, I'll just cut myself out from my knowing and do what you're telling me. And then we don't have access to that anymore, all in the name of love. So what if we don't do that to our children? And, I'm not saying that we have to let the child have his or her way all the time, because I understand we live in a family. Some of us might have multiple children, so you might have your needs, like, we'll eat only at these times, or the whole family sits and has dinner together. Whatever your requirements, you can put them forward to the child and say, you know what, it really works for me if we eat at this time and sit at this time. But don't tell the child that his or her knowing is wrong. I know you're not hungry, but eat whatever you can, right? So don't invalidate what the child is saying, but request for cooperation. And our children, again, because they love us so much, they will cooperate without making themselves wrong and stupid and unknowing and thinking that mama, papa, doctor, everyone else knows better than me what's good and right for our bodies. Do we? Right? Every time there is a new report on what we need, and all of us have messed up bodies, and the children actually know what they need. So I'll share another story here with you. Okay, and this is actually quite recent. My son was about a month back, actually. He was coming back from school, sorry, and on the bus, he developed a severe allergy to something. We still don't know what it was. His face was all swollen red. The bus teacher called me up, and I go home. But he's completely peaceful. He's not bothered. And he's like, Mama, it was way worse on the bus. And he sort of, did something for himself, and it's gone down. It's not hurting anymore. I'm fine. He's totally fine. He's like, it's getting better. He's calm. And I'm like, let's go to the doctor. And he's like, no, Mama, trust me. I know. I'm fine. It's going away. So I wait. By 6:30, I'm all panicky. No, Siddharth, let's go to the doctor. Let's go to the doctor. And he's like, no, Mama, I'm fine. I know it's getting better. Trust me. And a part of me wants to trust him. I can see that. I can see that confidence. I can see that knowing. I don't want to invalidate it, but I am afraid. And so finally I tell him, sweetie, I know you know your body. And I really love it that you're so calm and confident and you know you're recovering. But I'm the chicken here. I'm afraid. Please, can you just humor me and go to the doctor? So we went to the doctor. The doctor gave him an anti-allergen. He had it obediently. And so this was sort of a middle path. I did my best to not invalidate him, and yet sort of, I couldn't function otherwise because my fears were sort of all over that day. And the next day, I heard him talking to his grandfather on the phone, and he was narrating the incident. And he was saying, I was fine, Tata. I knew I was getting better, but Mama was really afraid, so we went to the doctor so Mama can feel better. And that was so sweet. Our children will do these things for us, okay? And I was so happy that, yes, of course, even though maybe his takeaway from that was that Mama doesn't trust me so much enough that I know my body, but still, at least there was some connection that was left. He could trust his own knowing. So I didn't completely damage it that day. Okay, so the third point, fourth point actually, is that I want to talk about is something called mirror neurons and mimicking, okay? And so let me tell you about mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are actually a set of neurons that we hold, that are there in all our brains, whose job is actually to mimic, to reflect, to sort of mirror patterns in other people's brains. Now, how were mirror neurons actually discovered? So, neuroscientists in a lab in Italy were actually doing a series of experiments on a monkey, and where they wire up this monkey, and then they sort of map it onto a computer screen and see which part of the brain is activated when the monkey does certain things. So, and in the break, they noticed something interesting, which is that the monkey's brain was showing activity in the place that is related to motor activity of the monkey, but the monkey was not moving its hands and legs. So they said, oh, wow, this is strange, let's investigate. And they said, what's the monkey doing? The monkey was staring intently outside at someone else who's eating an ice cream and moving his hands. So that was the start, really, of this whole idea of mirror neurons. And of course, since then, there's been a lot of further research, not just on monkeys, but also human beings. So typically, it would involve research like, suppose they invite Partha and me into the lab, and they show Partha a horror movie and check his brain to make sure that he's getting scared. I don't get to see the audio or visual of the movie, but I just look at him when he's looking at the movie, and they scan what's happening in my brain and see if my brain is actually picking up and reflecting that fear, sensing that fear. So that's mirror neurons. It explains a lot of things to you. Things like when you watch a movie and the hero is crying and you're crying, or cricket, the team is playing, you're feeling the adrenaline, okay? Rock concerts, when there's a sense of euphoria. Riots, when, everyone's angry because everyone else is angry and half the people don't know why they're angry. So we live in this interconnected mesh of, picking up and reflecting other people's thoughts and emotions all the time. We can talk a lot about mirror neurons. Actually, it's got lots of fascinating applications. But in the context of parenting, what happens is that, remember the way one of the key factors, variables, that influences the effect of mirror neurons is the attention. So the monkey is staring at that man, and therefore the monkey is mimicking, right? So I can be sitting on the sofa when a really exciting cricket match is going on, but I'm not interested in cricket. So actually, I don't feel that adrenaline rush, and I'm not mimicking the players. So when you give your attention or wonder to somebody, that's when the mirror neurons really kick in. And what about little children? They're like, Mommy, Daddy, you're the heroes and heroines in my world. That's how the child is looking up at you. Woo, Mommy, Daddy. And it's all mirror neurons activated. Whoa. And that's how children mimic us. So if you've seen why kids learn through mimicry and imitation and all, they're geared up to do that. And I'm not talking about teenagers here. Teenagers would probably like, Mommy, Daddy, I'll be just the opposite. I'm talking about children below the age of 10, typically 9 or 10, right? And so they're constantly mirroring and mimicking things. Now, how can we use this in parenting? So the more we work on our own stuff, the more we actually influence our children. And here's the thing. So even if you're doubting their knowing, for example, or if you have your stuff, you have a prescription of this is what a good child is, getting good marks for college, even if you're not telling it to the child is picking up. So we really need to work on ourselves here. The child is not just cueing into what we're telling. It's about what we're being, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. The child is mimicking all of that and making that also real and true because they love us so much. Now, so really the challenge for us here is to work on ourselves. And in my own experience, this always brings more ease to the situation, any situation when I choose to work on myself rather than the child. And I'm going to share another example with you here. And so this happened when my son was quite little, actually. And it was summer vacations. We were in my parents' house, and my sister was down with her kids. There were 3 kids playing, and they started squabbling about something. And I shouted at my son. And after I shouted, I realized I shouted, and I said, okay, I need a timeout. I'm taking a timeout, and I went upstairs. And I went to meditate and unwind my own thoughts and sort of charge out of that situation and to become present again. And so when I came back, and to really reflect on what it was that had triggered me, when I came back, my mother told me what the children were talking when I went up. So apparently the other 2 kids were amused, and they asked my son, why is your mother giving herself a timeout? And he said, in our house, when Mama gets angry and shouts, she gets a timeout. And why shouldn't that be a norm? Why not? right? Why should the child always get the timeout? And timeout is not punishment. I didn't take a timeout as punishment. I took it out of realizing that I had lost my temper, lost my cool. I don't actually remember what it was that day, whether my son had done something wrong or not. I don't remember. Even if he had done something so-called wrong, I could have told it to him, corrected him in a way without losing my temper. And I took a timeout, not because I had to correct him, but because I lost my temper. So timeout isn't punishment, but it is a gift that we give ourselves to use that incident, again, to introspect, to reflect, to break free from our own conditioning that holds us trapped in patterns. And the more we do that, if our children notice us doing that, guess what they will do? They will do that. They will give themselves time out when they catch themselves cranky, shouting, fighting, or behaving in ways they don't want to. They will do the same thing because they're mimicking us. They will learn to take responsibility for their own emotions. When they see us honoring their knowing and not making them wrong because we think they should eat something, but their body is saying something else, they develop that same sense of respect to other people who will differ with them. So they can actually tolerate differences, people saying something different from what they think should be done. And that's okay. They'll develop allowance for that. They'll develop resilience. So, okay. So I'll conclude now, right, which is that being a conscious parent opens us up to be able to connect with our children in deeply authentic ways. So while it is immensely joyful and fulfilling, I want to make a disclaimer here that despite all the flowers on the screen, it's not always a bed of roses. It frequently pushes us out of our comfort zone and requires us to look at ourselves in brutally honest ways, which is not always fun. But the key to consciousness, however, in parenting or otherwise, is non-judgment. So we apply the same non-judgment that we apply to our children back to ourselves, the same compassion back to ourselves. And when we catch ourselves operating out of unconsciousness, losing our temper, blindly putting things, operating out of our fears and insecurities, we say, aha, I was doing this, we acknowledge it, and then we let it go, and we choose something different, without blaming ourselves, feeling guilty, or beating ourselves up about it. So, a child will probably benefit more, finally, from us being happy than being whatever we think being a good parent is. And remember mirror neurons, when we are happy, the child picks up that happiness also. Now, a last point. Sometimes people think that when we say don't dump your expectations and agendas on the child, or don't invalidate the child's own knowing, this amounts to leaving the child alone, neglecting the child, being indifferent to his needs. Not at all. Being a conscious parent requires us to be intensely present to our children, awake, alert, and present in every moment of our interaction. In fact, a part of our attention can be tuned to their needs even when we are not interacting with them. Instead of operating from the fantasy or conditioning of our mind, we choose to be authentically present for our child in whatever way our child needs us in that moment. And when our child doesn't need us, we celebrate his or her independence. And we are willing to cast our egoistic role of a parent aside and step into the background, silently observing, witnessing, and enjoying the growth of something that is so natural and organic, like our children. Since I started with Khalid Gibran's poem, I will end with one of my own on parenting. It's called Being a Parent. And I wrote it soon after circle time in my son's school. We have circle time for parents in my son's school. So, what if I were just a platform, a base to help my child to grow, a reliable stage that supports him gently and quietly from below? What if I was just the space for my child to learn and play, a space that welcomes all of him, whatever his mood, every day? What if I didn't have to tell? What if I didn't have to show? What if I didn't have to lead to impose upon him what I know? What would that be like? Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that emotional talk. So let's begin with a panel discussion, and I would like to call upon our first panelist, Ms. Subha Parthasarthi. She's a counselor, trainer, and founder of Magic Hive, a center based in JP Nagar 7th Phase. She has been working with parents and children since 2006 and is focused on the parent-child domain. Ms. Subha has been taken 10 sessions parenting workshop called Chetana since 2009. She also takes workshops based on non-violent communication. She follows a holistic approach to change and work with all major stakeholders, children, parents, and teachers. She takes year-long life skills program for children at Magic Hive, conducts teacher training program, workshop, and workshops with parents through counseling and parenting workshops. She has written numerous articles in Deccan Herald on parenting, has appeared on one-on-one talk show on FM Rainbow, and has taken several workshops in Infosys BPO, Northern Trust, Capgemini, IIMB. She has spent thousands of hours with parents and children over the last decade. She also runs a Magic Hive YouTube channel where one can find many short parenting tip videos. Recently, the creative team in J.W. Thompson, the ad agency, identified Magic Hive as a change maker and has teamed up with Magic Hive to release a coffee table book of poems with a tagline, "When you're hard on your kids, they can be hard on the world." The book is scheduled for release in the next 2 weeks. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. I would like to call upon our next panelist, Dr. Anuradha. Dr. Anuradha is the Treasurer and Executive Board Member, Bangalore Pediatric Society and Bangalore Adolescent Health Academy. She was also a teen spirit columnist for Bangalore Mirror and Mumbai Mirror. She is the certified emotional intelligence consultant from the 6 Seconds, USA. She has presented a paper on smartphone addiction among the adolescents at IIMB and on parental perspective on sexuality education for adolescents at IWH in 2017. She has also published a self-guidebook for adolescent girls in collaboration with Rotary International. Some of her main interest domains are adolescent sexuality, media and adolescents, parenting, emotional intelligence for parents, teachers and adolescents, parenting sessions for parents of adolescents with special needs. She has conducted various programs for parents, schools, and various organizations in collaboration with Prameya Healthcare to promote preventive healthcare. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. I now would like to call Ms. Sujatha Narasimhan, alumnus of PGP 90Y. She has spent her early years in advertising in J.W. Thompson. She then moved to the US, studied and worked there in telecom industry. After returning to India, she worked with Airtel, Midas Technologies, Nokia. Later, she moved to the social work while setting up a corporate fundraising for Save the Children in India. After her maternity break, she is now stay-at-home to a 6.5-year child. She is a linguistic, as she can speak 8 languages proficiently and comfortably. She writes poetry in English, Tamil, Hindi, and French. She is a gym enthusiast and interested in Kerala mural art. When the floods hit Chennai in 2015, she ran an initiative to help rehabilitate government schools that were affected. She has worked in 4 districts to establish labs, library, toilets, and kitchens in several of them with purely online voluntary host model. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. Our next panelist is Ms. Sugami Ramesh. Ms. Sugami Ramesh is a part-time counselor at IIMB since 2015. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology, master's in human resource management, and master's in counseling and psychotherapy and B.Ed. Ms. Sugami is working with as a senior consultant, Department of Clinical Psychology at Apollo Hospital. Prior to this, she was volunteering as a counselor at Vishwas, an organization that offers free counseling for about 6 years. She has over 30 years of experience in counseling. Her expertise in the areas of women's psychology, child psychology and industrial psychology. She has authored several articles in leading newspaper and magazines on counseling. She has worked for 15 years as a teacher and counseled children in several schools in India. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. I would like to call upon Ms. Ramya to moderate the session.
Thank you, and welcome once again, and thank you for coming and being a part of this session. So I'd like, so the way we'll plan this is that, so I'd like each one of you to take turns and share your own thoughts on this whole idea of, some of these points that we've just talked about, and on conscious parenting and even otherwise, and then we'll open it up to the audience and we'll take questions. So we can just go in order and
Yeah, first point is, thank you, Ramya. Thank you, all of you, for giving this opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be with you all. So the first point which Professor Ramya has mentioned about letting go of our stuff. I do experience a lot of these cases in my hospitals and my clinics about parents do carry their feelings when they are dealing with by parenting and all that. And especially when somebody is going through illness, any of them in the family who's going through illness, they usually go through this, especially if elderly people or one of the family members who's going to some serious illness. I do feel that they will not be able to let go of, in my experience, in my clinics. I do find this. Because all your attention will be going through to that person, and you will be neglecting your parentinghood. You will be neglecting your own self also to a certain extent. I feel there is a lack of in this. When I have got cases also, parent giving lot of attention to their elderly care or somebody who is very sick, and the bargain they'll be neglecting their children. So they go into a lot of this. So I want all parents to take care of that so that the children are not getting affected with that. Then after that, operating in now. That is also, like what she said, is we need to be at that point of time when they are going through some crisis, when the children are going through, we should get their feelings. We should understand their feelings. We should pick up the body language of the children. We parents can pick up. When I can pick up, you parents are there all the 24/7, you can pick up. When the children enter into my clinic, I can pick up their feelings. So as a parent, I want you to pick up those body languages and know what they are going through. It is not that you should immediately get that, whatever you're curious about, you can take it as a casual manner. What happened? See, it happens to you can narrate your own experience, and then they connect you. That's what I do. When I can connect, I'm sure as a parent, you all can do that, going into their present situation, whatever. And of course, when she mentioned about honoring the child, knowing, that is also very important. We forget to do so. We, as a parent, some of the parents do forget to do honoring the child, what they do. It's okay, I got better marks. And in fact, sometimes they put them off. So that is what they come and tell us, that children do come and tell me that my parents are doing this. So I feel very sad for the child that parents are treating that. And then I had to counsel the parent also. More than the child, the parent need to be aware of these things. And what she said about mirror neurons mimicking, I can really quote one example. One child was a little handicapped, and he was being teased, and he was being ill-treated by his friends and all that. And mother knew that he is little disabled, that's why he's going through all this. She was getting a lot of panic attacks and anxiety about the entire situation. When she came to me, I had to, more than the child, of course, I talked to the child. I could guess what he was going through. Then I told him how to handle his peers, pressure and all that. So he became a little confident and he started behaving well. Then I talked to that parent separately, and I made her to understand what you're going through that is what is reflecting on your child, and you're reflecting on your The child is, and that's how he's picking up. You become strong. You become, you show that your child, you are not running into that kind of anxiety and fear about how my child is facing the siblings and all that. Definitely he'll pick up. Over a few sessions, she picked up those things, and she did not show any kind of a reaction towards his boy's upset and all that. And boy himself commented on child, it seems, Mama, these days you are behaving so well, you are not so getting panic. Yeah, Papa, yeah, child, I'm able to get that confidence now. So this I felt very nice, because from the way she was overreacting to that situation, she was able to build that confidence. So that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your views, and that last story was really touching. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thanks, Partha. I'm coming back to campus. It is the third time in 25 years. It feels very different now. It may sound very funny, but for me, the best book on parenting that I would have read is Little Prince by Saint-Antoine de Exupéry. It talks a lot to adults, actually, about life, about people in general, and things like that. But there are two things from that book which has always resonated with me. One in which, one of the characters in the book says, grown-ups were once children. It's just that only few remember it. So I think as parents, we have, we've grown up so much, we've forgotten how our childhood was and what we did as children, that now we only behave as adults with our children, but we don't see it from their perspective. And another quote, again from that book, that has always stayed with me, is that, it is the time that you waste on the rose that makes the rose so important. So there is this little prince, he's in his planet, and he has a little rose plant, and he thinks that he has spent a lot of time with it, but he's not getting back anything from it, and he's very frustrated and things like that, and then he decides to go and explore other planets and stuff like that. And then in a conversation with a snake, so he talks about all this, and then this conversation happens, and it's like, why is that rose so important? It's because you spend so much time on the rose that makes it so important. And then in that, they also say, when you have a field of roses, you don't realize the importance. But when you search for one rose, you know how important that rose is. I think these two things from that book, which is not about children, which is not about parenting, that has made the most impact on me in my journey as a parent. So, incidentally, just today I was going through my Facebook. One of the memories that I got was about 4 years ago, when my child was just 2 years and 3 months. We had April showers. It was not this hot. It was raining, and my child said, I want to go out and play. And I was like, it's raining, we can't go out and play. Then he said, no, but I want to go. So we used to live in Bangalore, in an apartment complex with about 1,000 apartments and stuff like that. Trust me, on that day, one evening about 4:30 or something of that sort, my child and I, him carrying a water bottle with him, we walked. Nobody. There were drizzles, and we both were walking, and I asked him, where do you want to go? And he told me, right on Old Airport Road, our apartment complex was close to Old Airport Road. There's a little place where you can sit next to the commercial complex. He said, I want to go and see a mouse there. I said, okay, we'll go. So we had gone there before, and he had seen a little hole from where he had seen a mouse scurry out. I said, okay, let's go. So we went there. And we sat on the little grass, and he said, and he just sat down. And I asked him, what do you want to do? He said, the mouse has gone to office. I want to be there when it comes back. This is true, and I'm not making it up. So there are drizzles. I'm sitting on the grass knoll with my child, and he is intently looking at the entrance, waiting for a mouse to come. And we waited for 45 minutes. In that time, the buses and ambulances, and he used to be crazy about bus, auto, and lorry and stuff like that, ambulance from Manipal Hospital and stuff like that, nothing. 45 minutes, he stared at that hole, waiting for a mouse to come, and I just sat there and watched my child. So when, at that time, I realized, initially I was like, what the hell, 45 minutes looking for a goddamn mouse, But then, at that time, I realized that when I was a child, I used to live in a huge apartment complex myself, and there was a huge water tank. I used to look up and see what the water meter is like and stuff like that, and suddenly there would be a jet which goes. My mother would call out and say, come to have your milk or something of that sort. And I'm like, Amma, wait, I'm coming. And I would not go till I finished seeing the last of the jet entrails just vanish. It was just a puff of cloud out there, and I would not go until I do that. On that day, I realized, it's like, how much that memory of just seeing a jet, it would take some 25 years before I got onto a plane, but that memory of that cloud just vanishing and the amount of time I spent on it, that's the same for my child, waiting for a mouse to come. So that one incident, in a lot of ways, it's like letting go of my own stuff, saying like this 45 minutes I could go and type, I could do my French homework, I could cook, I could bake and stuff like that. Or operating in the now, saying like, now this memory of waiting for the mouse is important for my child. And just letting him be, it was so important. So, I don't have experience like all of you do working with many children. More than anything else, when we talk about parenting, the first thing that I thought about today was not that I am raising my child, but how much my child has raised me. Yeah. I may have thought that I'm going to be a kick-ass mother. I'm going to bring up this child and this and that and all that kind of stuff. I think it's my child who has raised me. A lot of who I am now is because of my child. I think it's an evolutionary process. He has taught me so much. I have become a baker because of him. I have learned Kannada because of him, because, I know that he's going to go to school and learn, because I also love learning languages. I have learned a lot of stuff because of him. This entire process of mindful thinking and living, I've learned because of him. And, as a parent, and whenever somebody tells me, like, oh, you're this or you're that, I said, like, it's him who's driving me. And I think I'm responding to him more than me being, what I want to be with him. So if somebody talks to me about parenting, the only thing I'll say is just listen to your child. So that's that. Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, and that the story of waiting for the mouse is such a gift that you've given us. I'm sure all of us will cherish it and reflect back on it in our own lives. And indeed, what you said, our children can be such wonderful gifts, teachers, everything, right? The gurus of our life, if we want them to be, they'll be whatever. And thank you for highlighting that.
That was so beautiful, that line when you said that, my child is raising me and I'm not raising the child. And it's so very true. And thank you so much, Partha. Thank you, Ankita, for having me here. This is my first time in this auditorium. And I'm really excited to address all of you. And before I start off, I'd just like to ask one question. All of you, I think you have done you have studied here, right? So what was more challenging, getting into IIM or parenting? Yeah. So, because you have heard my profile, what I'd like to share is that, I work more with parents of teenagers, and I'm a pediatrician, and I have had the pleasure and the joyful experience of seeing these kids grow into wonderful teenagers. Are there parents of teenagers here in the audience? Yeah. Because the silence was very prominent when I said. But yes, parenting teenagers can be very, very joyful. But the biggest problem, or what is challenging about parenting, is that you have to work killer hours, you don't get paid for it. It's a 24/7 job that you have, and there's little or no training that is available. We have to use our own intuition, our own experience or advice from people who are around us to do this job. And that's what makes it so challenging. I have plenty of stories to share, but there are two which really, are very much in my mind when I think of this particular point when it says how to let go of your own stuff when it comes to dealing with a teenager. Now, the personal story that I would like to share is that a few years ago, I went on a trip to Dubai with my son. He was then about, I think he was about 13 years old. And we were very tired because we had been roaming around in the mall the whole day, going to the water park, and he had done scuba diving. But so we said, okay, let's just, because we were leaving the next day, so I said, let's end the trip by watching a movie. So we went for this show, which started at about 8:30. So we finished seeing one movie, and I was all ready to go back to the hotel because we had an early morning flight next day. And my son said, "Ma, what about watching another movie?" I said, okay. He said, for once in your life, be adventurous. Come, let's do it. So I said, okay. So we went and watched another movie. And by the time we came out, it was close to about 1 o'clock. And then he said, what about a third one now? And I said, my God, how can I do it? And he said, please, 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 let's do it. It'll be fun. And believe me, I went for the third movie. And I saw, it reminded me of my college days where we used to have that VCR and we used to do marathon sessions, watching movies. And believe me, it was such a great experience. We had a fantastic time, and we did make it in time for the flight the next day. But it was a huge learning experience for me because I learned to let go of certain things. Because I felt as a parent, I should be behaving in a certain way. I have to set an example. How can I allow my teenage son to, watch 3 movies in a row? But I did it all the same. And believe me, it was so wonderful. And that's why this incident really stays with me even to this day. Now, another important story that I would like to share is about this. I also work with parents who go through infertility treatment. So I have lots of kids who are, of course, they're growing up now, but they have been conceived after many years of, frustration and all the difficulties that parents go through when they have to, go through infertility treatment. It can be really difficult for them. So there was this mother, and she had this baby girl, and she was so excited, both the parents. And I was really happy for them because she had been trying for a long period, for more than about 10, 11 years, and she was so happy to have this child. And she enjoyed every bit of the child growing up as it became 4 years, 5 years old, 10 years, and then she became 12 years old. And, she came and asked me, she says, "Doctor, when can I stop being a parent?" I said, "I'm sorry. I have some news for you. Once you're a parent forever. Now, whether your child becomes 15, 20, 40, 50, you still remain a parent. You can't get away." And the reason why this point came up was that this girl was very talented. She was very intelligent. She was very good at doing creative stuff. She was a great dancer, and she used to do very well at languages and all other subjects, but she had a lot of problem with maths. And the reason why the parents came to me was that this kid was doing very badly in maths. And they had reached a stage where in the previous test, she had failed maths. And that was the first time that the father came to my clinic. Because all these days, it was the mother who used to bring her. And this time, the father came to me and he said, "Doctor, I'm quite fed up with her. And I have told her that, if she fails maths, she can't do anything in life. So she had better get ready. She can be a waitress in one of the restaurants." And this was a father who had really desired this child for so long, going through all the treatment. And unfortunately, he had also used his belt. So it happens even today. She was 12, and he had used that because he was so disappointed in her that she had not done well in maths. And I was, my heart broke when I saw the tears in this girl's eyes because the father did not respect whatever she had done. Whatever. She had done very well in everything else, but this was one subject where she had failed, and the father was only able to see that. He wasn't able to see what the girl had achieved in the other areas. And the father was so frustrated, he was so angry as he was talking to me. So he was telling me, he says, "Doctor, I have sacrificed so much for this child, and I have worked very, very hard. And, I had so many problems in my previous job. And, my colleagues, they looked down upon me, and I couldn't survive in that. But I had to earn because I have to take care of my family. I have to pay for this girl. And it's been so difficult for me. It's just about 3 months that I have started a new business, and now I'm kind of okay. So this was, I waited for him to vent out all whatever his frustrations and his problems that he had been going through. So there's a lot of baggage to every time, when a parent comes and does something, there's a lot of baggage behind that. So when he had started, or when he finished narrating his story, I asked him, I said, yeah, so you had problems in your previous job. So please tell me, when you started this business, what was the reaction at home? What did your family and what did your friends say? Because it's a huge step, right? Leaving a job and starting something on your own. There are a lot of risks involved. He said, no, I had a lot of support from my wife. I had a lot of support from my family and all my friends. Then I asked me, then what is it do you think your daughter expects from you today? She has failed. You failed somewhere. And just at that point of time, if your friends and family had not believed in you, if they had not supported you, do you think you would have been able to take a step forward and start something on your own? And the moment I said that, he realized what I was trying to get at. So that was a great transformation for him, because he realized that this was a point where he really needed to let go of his own stuff, in the sense that all the sacrifices, focusing on all the sacrifices and everything that he had done, and come to the point and understand that always when you fail in life, you have to look for support, and it's your family, your friends, and all the people around you that give you support. And believe me, for a teenager, the most important, the parent power is tremendous. You have so much influence, contrary to the belief, because we feel that once they become teenagers, they don't want to listen to us. But the point is that they crave for the connection. They crave for a connect with the parents, and this is exactly what this kid required. And once the father was able to put aside his stuff, and he was able to understand that this is the time where I need to help treat this particular failure as just a lesson in life, and to say that failing is very normal and you can move forward. And this is where I realized, how powerful letting go of your own stuff can be, and how it can be very helpful to teenagers.
Thank you.
So I'll come back to the other points maybe later.
Yeah, later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm grateful for being given the opportunity to be here. Professor Ramya, brought out the 4 points which are bang on. I mean, they are very, very relevant to parenting. So, how do I see parenting as? Now, when we look at parenting, I became a parent 20 years back. So, when I looked at parenting at that point of time, it was like, oh, it's going to be smooth. Like she shared that, people have told me that I'm capable, I'm friendly, I'm very adaptable, and it's going to be perfect. So when my son was born, it was not perfect. It was like this big field in front of you, and you can see those few things, right? You can see the grass growing, you can see certain stones, you can see a path, and you think like you got it, you're there. And then you start walking that path, and then suddenly there are a lot of speed breakers. Things are not happening the way you think it should happen or it needs to happen. That really hurts, because you realize that where you are coming from, that's not the way it's working. And that is the point when you have that opportunity. So when we say parenting challenges, I look at it more as opportunities. Challenge and opportunities go together. So we have a term for it. We call it chopportunity, challenging opportunities. So what is the opportunity when you're walking this path of parenting? Parenting is not a separate field. It is one of the aspects of our life, right? So what are these opportunities that we are looking at? And what, she shared, letting go of our stuff. I look at it as knowing ourselves more, becoming more self-aware. What is my belief? What is my thought? What is my feeling? What do I get motivated with? What are the images that I'm working with? And that is very, very important. Because we use these images as part of our, it reflects us. I'm a good parent. I'm kind, I'm caring. These are the images that we carry for ourselves, and that really gets hit when our children are growing up. That's a beautiful place to start working with ourselves. Self-awareness, self-management. We have the opportunity to become more emotionally aware. We have grown up, though our parents have been kind, caring, supportive, there has been little less focus on emotions. So our emotional intelligence is little needs work on. So the more emotionally aware we are about, being able to name what we are feeling, become aware of where we feel it in our body, increase that awareness about ourselves, right? The more effective we will be with our children and even in our personal lives. So self-awareness, emotional, awareness. Then the third is resilience. We build resilience because we are working in that moment with that awareness, and we become stronger in terms of handling these, these road breakers or speed humps that come on our way. The main thing when we become self-aware is that we learn not to predict, but to discover. And they beautifully shared few examples, which I can resonate with. The more we predict people, the more we get depressed. The more we discover people, we are discovering ourselves too. And children especially. We tend to, have predictions about our kids. If a child is doing well in first standard, we say, ye to successful rahega. He'll be a scientist. Or he'll be, so we start thinking that way, and we also give those messages to our children that you are intelligent, you're smart, you are creative, we use all these labels around them. But as they are growing up and they face their own challenges or they have their own, process of learning, we are not able to accept what comes. So like Professor Ramya says, it's all about self-awareness. The more aware, the more clear we are in what we are seeing, how we are seeing them. So if you're discovering your children, then you can understand how the process will be, right? So you're walking in the field, and suddenly there is a thorn which comes up. You say, oh, there's a thorn. Now what do I do with it? Instead of, oh, there is a thorn. What do I do? So most of the times we are looking at children as problems. They are not problems. They are here in our life to give us an opportunity to learn more about ourselves. So when we start letting go of our rigidity, our beliefs, we are more willing to explore. We are giving the same thing to our kids. They are willing to explore. They are willing to learn. They are willing to accept themselves the way they are, not based on how the world thinks they should be. I have 2 children. One is 20 and one is 15. And believe me, all my learning comes from them. Every day is a new day. And there are so many aspects of them which I still don't know about. And I'm learning that. So when we see children, we see them each day different. And that's what brings joyfulness in our life, right? So she talked about mindfulness, here and the now. And that's very, very powerful. So we don't work from the past, we don't work from the future, we work from what we see right now. The child is crying right now, how do I deal with it? The child may not be telling me the truth right now, how do I work with it? So when we are working from the right here and the now, we are more aware of what the choices we have. So what is being mindful? Being mindful is to step back and observe. To step back and see what is going on. To step back and see what are the choices we have. So when I have choices, then I make a conscious decision to do something, and I take full responsibility for it. And that is what children are seeing. If I'm not willing to take responsibility for what I do, how do I expect them to do it? And that comes to the fourth point she shared about mirroring, the mirror neurons. If they are able to see us process our life in a certain way, yes, you will find resistance. You may find them picking up certain things and not certain things, but they still will know that something is working out there. They will come back to it. So there are many times my daughter tells me, what you do is, it just doesn't work. You don't know how to, work with me, or, she'll scold me for that. And I'll say, yeah, maybe you're right. So let's start with a clean slate. And after some time, she'll come back and she'll say, okay, give me empathy right now. Or she'll say, okay, listen to me. I want you to listen to me. And that's like a mirror, because it helps me to pause. It helps me to stop. So we can use this, stop thing for being mindful. The first thing is to stop. Take a deep breath. Parenting, like she said, is a lifelong journey. So you're not going to get over it in one day. Don't try to solve things in a day. What has happened for years, we want a miracle to happen and the child needs to be perfect the next day. It doesn't happen that way. So take a deep breath. Observe your thoughts and feelings and proceed mindfully. So for us, being a counselor, having worked with parents and children, and also working with children, it's really interesting how, each one works from a different perspective. And to be able to see all these perspectives, it's really, humbling. So right now we are having a theater workshop and at Magic Hive. And these kids are 11, 12, 13. So we had this activity in pairs. They had to do something in pairs. They had to do a pantomime. So each pair did it, and after that, when we have this reflection, so another important aspect of learning things is reflection. So after every activity, we would do reflection. So I asked the kids, they were coming here for the first time. So I said, what do you think is reflection? So one child promptly said, Auntie, what you see in the mirror? So, they're so used to, and another child says, when the light falls, there is I said, wow, that's science. So I said, we look at it differently. When do we learn? When we reflect on what has happened, how it has happened, how we feel about it. So the child says, wow, that's a new way of, looking at reflection. And so one of the pairs was not very happy with the way the work went, their activity went. So the child said, no, I was not heard, Auntie. He did what he wanted. So the child was asked, okay, what are you thinking? He said, no, I thought that I was hearing her. So then we went back to the child and said, what would you like to do about it? So she said, okay, next time when we work, I'll make sure that I am also heard. And the next time they had the activity, this boy came to me and said, I'm not heard. So the other two are like, okay, what do you want to do? I said, what do you want to do? So he said, no, I would like to discuss it again before we do the activity. And then he said, now I'm satisfied. So even these small things, that comes to the third point of honoring their thoughts, honoring their emotions, honoring what is going on with them. And I think that is one of the powerful, aspects of not just parenting, of individuality also. We have learned not to trust our instincts, but instincts are something that is, you need to listen to those instincts. And it happens every day for children. When you take your kids out, how many of you have 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds? Okay, yeah. So when you take out your children, you go get into a lift or something, and someone says, hi, good evening, or something like that, and your child refuses to say anything and hides behind your pallu and kurta, and then the person says, oh, she's very shy. Oh, so shy, huh? And then you come out of the lift, what is the first thing you tell your child? Let me guess. Why didn't you say hello to that uncle? Where is the question of honoring what they are going through? Where is the question of listening to them and saying, hey, you didn't say good morning, so something was going on with you? Would you like to share? I didn't like that uncle. Now again we jump in because we know that uncle. So we are like, you shouldn't say that. He's a good uncle. So the child says, okay, I'm not sure who is good, who is bad. You tell me. Where is the gut? Right? Lot of child abuse, molestation happens because we are not listening to the child. So we tell them how to behave because again it comes back to what we are carrying. So all these 4 points that have been highlighted are interconnected. So I am more worried about the reflection of me in front of others. And the child, he's dependent on whom? Us, adults. Where are we for them? The child says, I don't want to go on the stage, I'm scared. Nothing to be scared about. I know better. You take the child to a party, go and mingle. Do we go and talk to everyone? Have I spoken to everyone out here? No. Right? So what goes for us goes for them too. Somewhere we have missed that. Somewhere we have forgotten that. Somewhere we want them to be something based on what we think we want them to be. We are not here to mold children. We are just here to support them. And Khalil Gibran's poem says it all. We don't need to give them our thoughts. We don't need to give them what is right, what is wrong. They can figure it out. Children are very much capable. It is just that we don't give them opportunity to be capable. Because we think they don't know. Whether it is food, whether it is play, whether it is going out, it can be as simple as the child wants to go out and play. And you think it's cold. So what will you tell your child? Wear your sweater and go. So the child says, no. No, wear your sweater and go, otherwise I will not send you out. Right? The child wears the sweater, goes out and then removes it. And loses the sweater also. And then you say, hey, you are irresponsible. You are careless. Do you use these words? These adjectives are the most hurtful of adjectives. I mean, adjectives are, you can use it for things. I mean, cold water. Don't use it for people, cold person. Stubborn, sensitive. I used to put this label on myself. I'm a very sensitive person. So I cry for everything. So I'm sensitive. But I don't cry for everything. I cry for few things. But it took me a long time to learn that. So when we label people, when we put adjectives on them, they become that. This is who I am. But the way I look at parenting is that we are all evolving, and so are children. So when I am work in progress, how about just accepting children the way they are and helping them, or I would say facilitate the process for them to be more self-aware, and they will figure out their way.
Yeah, thank you. So on that note,
Thank you so much. I think I took...
No,
it
was mesmerizing to listen to you, and I just wanted to, have some time for the audience to ask us specific questions as well. But I loved a lot of what you said, right? The fact about the labels, the labeling, there's lessons in that, a lot of that. So I'm just going to, I have some questions actually for all of you, but I think I'm going to give first opportunity to our members from the audience. So you can ask questions, you can direct it to anyone on the panel in specific, including me, or you can just ask a question and whichever one of us wants to take it up can take it up. So yeah, so can we, yes, we'll pass the mics around. I think there's someone there. So So in the interest of time, I'm going to request all members of the audience to condense your question into the crisp question to whatever extent you can. And then
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it was a wonderful insight from each one of you. Any one of you can take my question, or all of you can answer this question. My question is, how do you help children or ourselves, in fact it is applicable to everyone, handle the impulse, right? Impulsive reaction or impulsive decision. I'll narrate one incident because it's a real life incident that happened. It's a lovely parenting, and we saw the parents bringing up the children, and it happened just 3 weeks ago. For some reason, the child jumped out of the 10th floor and lost her life, right? And we saw the child growing up. We saw the parenting. Parents did not restrict the child on anything, but it was such an impulsive decision, it went off. Now, when I look at this impulse, it's like lightning strike, right? You have the high impulse for a few nanoseconds. If that can be controlled, probably, we could have saved the child. So my question to you is, how do you help people handle that impulsive decision?
yeah, sure.
I'd like to know what the age of this child was. 18 years old. Yeah. So this is something like we have been really working on, because we run a program on preventing teen depression and suicide. And we like to talk to parents, the adolescents, teachers, and all the stakeholders who are involved with adolescents. Yes, it's an impulsive action that has happened, but there's a lot of background to it. Now, one of the key things when it comes to teenagers for us to understand is that when you spoke about work in progress, that's very, very true for a teenage brain. So when you look at neuroscience, if you remember the brain a little bit, we have the front part and we have the back part of the brain. Your front part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, and that is the CEO of the brain. And that is responsible for judgment, for decision making. And at the back we have the emotional brain. Now, for a teenager, what works more is the emotional brain. It's 80,000 times, working 80,000 times faster than the frontal part of the brain. So when it comes to any decision making, they react more from the emotional brain. And always the emotional brain, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex. So when they take a certain decision, they are reacting from here. So very often you will see a teenager who is wheeling on the road. There's no helmet, there's another person sitting at the back. It's like the road is jam-packed with so many vehicles, and say, oh my God, doesn't this person understand what's going to happen? If there's an accident, either he'll lose a limb or die, or anything could happen. And don't you think the teenager is aware of that? Definitely he is aware of that. But the point is that he also has a very, very active reward center. He's seeking thrill and wants the reward center to get stimulated, and that's the reason why he does that. So his frontal part of the brain is still not very active. It's still maturing. Do you know how long it takes for the brain to mature, for the cortex? Because so often we tell our teenagers, you are old enough now, can't you decide for yourself? We say that very often. You have to be at least 23 to 24 years old for your brain to be mature and for your frontal part of the brain to be really active and take the right decisions. So that's where parenting is very, very crucial. So in this particular case, when you have an adolescent now, that's where validating the teenager's emotions, operating in the now, adopting mindful parenting plays a huge role. We all try to be the best parent we can. We try our best. And we try to learn from others, and we do it. But what happens is, when it comes to teenagers, please understand that when we talk about 21st century parenting, the teenagers actually, they sometimes live in two worlds. There's one world which is there at home, and there's another world outside for them. So if you actually, in fact, I run a youth club, and I did a stress scale. I don't think there was any teenager who was without stress. All of them scored positive. And these are all like our children who are coming from good families. And I'm not trying to say that the parents are not good. It's not about that. But the point is that there are certain things because we fail to accept. And when I talk about validating emotions, The biggest challenge I find in teenagers today is also about the changing sexual norms that are existing in today's society. So very often, the cause for suicide. In India, of course, the number one cause is academic failure. So very high parental and teachers' expectations, and also the stress the adolescent puts on himself or herself. The pressure to achieve. So the stressors are there everywhere and they all operate. And they can be very unconscious. When you are an unconscious parent, you give a message that you have to get into IIT, you have to be an engineer, you have to do this, and for this you must study well. And even if you don't say it, it's implied. And that's where the teenagers, they feel very, very pressurized. And so you will see in Bangalore, all the string of suicides that you get soon after results are announced. And for us, that's a very important part because we are very careful. This is the time we want to kind of handhold them, provide the safety net that the teenager needs. The second thing which I said is one of the important tasks of adolescence is developing a sexual identity. See, teenage is about growing up and saying, who am I? And then grow up to a phase where he or she is able to take his own conscious decisions. Until then, as parents, we are the frontal cortex for the teenager. We have to help them. Teenagers do not have what we call a consequential thinking. So when they do something, they may not evaluate the pros and cons. For them, it's now that is important. If I tell a teenager who is smoking that 30 years later you will get cancer, he says, 40, 50 years I'm going to get cancer, who's bothered? For that, why should I give up the pleasure of smoking today? But when I tell him that your teeth will get stained, your breath will stink, and there's no other girl who is going to come near you, he's ready to change. Because that's what works for him. He's not bothered about what's going to happen. So that is where the impulsive behavior of a teenager can be really, and at that point of time, it's how we can prevent such incidents, and that comes only by validating their emotions. So if they have, for example, I had a 13-year-old girl who was in a relationship with a boy, and they broke up after about 8 or 10 months, and she was very upset. She was doing badly at school. And how the mother found out was that she was looking at the phone, and she realized that she had been texting a boy. So she saw the whole thing, and she was very upset about the whole thing. Because the child was not doing well in school. She was feeling low, and that's how they brought this girl to me. And what would you do if you are a parent and you have a daughter who has done this? How would you react at that point of time? I think it's very natural the way the mother reacted. She said, how can you do all this at 13? I didn't do all this when I was 13. I was only studying. You're not supposed to do all these things. Anyway, I'm very glad that all this is over. Now, throw that phone away, focus on your studies, because that's the most important goal in your life. And on one side, I had this girl who was devastated because she was going through, she had broken up with somebody whom she really liked. And she was so anxious, she was frustrated, and she was upset about the whole thing, and she was unable to move forward. So in such situations, it's very, very important as parents that we acknowledge what the teenager is feeling at that point of time. It actually doesn't mean that you are agreeing with everything that he or she is doing. So, but just to say that I understand you're upset how this thing has worked out, but never mind, I'm there for you. So you can tell me about it. Just be there to listen. So once you become the parent of a teenager, please, God has given us 2 years, use that more, and this a little less. And you'll have a great connect with your teen. And if that just one sentence had come from the mother that I understand what you're going through, and I'm sure it was very, very difficult for you at this moment, and I'm ready to listen to you, it would have helped her to move forward. It would have helped her to accept what had happened and say that, yes, there are good things to come. And these things happen in life. So it's very, very important when we have situations like this for us to anticipate also what all the teenagers go through, to understand what's happening to them and not label them. So that's how I would look at it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I just want to add one point here. See, as far as I know, as far as my experience, I feel that this impulsive nature is over a period of time they would have developed it. And through body language, parents should have observed it and could have rectified it. They should have analyzed it. This person has got that impulse. It would have been, that's why we clinical psychology go through the background, family history of, is there anyone who has this impulsive nature or person. Usually when the parents are smoking and drinking, these are all impulsive nature. So that means there is the family history which adds up to the children's behavior. Also, this is what my feeling is about.
Thank you so much.
Just add
Yeah,
something.
sure.
I have a nephew. I part raised him, right? And very, very intelligent fellow. His parents, super intelligent, but really intelligent kid. And he wanted to, all he loved was caricatures, painting, animation and stuff. And of course, parents being parents, one parent wanted him to be an aeronautics engineer, another parent wanted him to be something else, whatever. And whenever he didn't do well in one school, they'd bump him to some other school, go to another school that would take him and stuff like that. So in his 12th standard, he got 3 marks in maths, 5 in science and various other things. And the only way he could react to his parents was, you are making me do this, right? I will show you who I am. He went and flunked his exams. You can only take him so much, but writing the exam paper, he had to do it. The only way he could express his displeasure with his parents was flunk his board exams. And now, he's now doing something with filmmaking and stuff like that. But it took like 2 years for the parents and the family and everybody to sort of understand. And I can tell you, even now the parents have not accepted the choice. There's a lot of stuff going on. So what happened was that one, he flunked the board exam, and after that, are you so stupid? How can you boast? You're useless. You can't do anything else. You come and work. You go and work in a tea shop and things like that. But all they had to do was let this boy do what he wanted to do. Sometimes we, as parents, we also have to understand the amount of power that we exercise on our children. And I worked in an NGO, Save the Children. It's an international child rights organization. And I've done a lot of workshop with parents and various people talking about child rights and stuff like that. When, she was also talking about, violence, the children hitting with a belt and things like that. The only question I always used to ask in many of these workshops is that, who do you hit? Who do you show power and aggression to? Somebody who cannot retaliate. You may have huge issues with your bosses at work. Do you go and hit your boss? Your boss never understands you. You're not going to go and hit the boss. Okay, a lot of people have in-laws, parents-in-laws, mother-in-law, father-in-law, your own sister-in-law, whatever. You have problems with it. You don't go and hit them because you know that that is an adult and you know that there is a framework. But with a child or it's somebody who cannot retaliate, you show violence. And when I say violence, it's not just physical violence, it's also verbal violence. What you do to them and what you do to destroy them. Their soul, you tell them you're good for nothing, you are this, you're that, you're a rat, you're a this and stuff like that, and you destroy the person. And then that person reacts to that, and then you react more to it, and it's just a violent cycle that never ends at all. So often, I have said that several times, do not show power, because you can. When you know that you cannot show that to other people, don't show it on your child. And to say that, I am a 6.5, I'm a mother of a 6.5-year-old. I think I've hit my child a couple of times, but, in extreme, I lost it. There are things that happen, but the point is, after that, I've sat down with my child and explained to him, I said, do not make me a bad parent. Don't force me to hit you. Whatever you are, you talk to me. And I say this to my 6-year-old, and even when he was 4 years old and 3-year-old, I said, talk to me. Always talk to me, and I will react. Just don't scream, just don't do things, because at some point, nobody is a perfect person, nobody is a perfect parent, and I am learning a lot. I have unlearned so much as a parent, I'm continuing to learn. But often, I don't have any experience other than my own nephew. I think teenagers don't know how to react, and they recognize us as good people, as our nourishers, as our providers, as everything, but they also realize that parents are the authority figures. And at some point, when they see you as the authority figure, that's how they react. And they feel powerless. They feel this is this person who's not going to listen to me, and this person completely doesn't understand. And I look up to this person, and this person means a lot to me, and that's when they snap and do it. I think My nephew, mercifully, did not do anything crazy. He just went and showed his frustration on his paper. But different kids react differently. So that's the only thing I would say.
Thank you so much.
I just want to add to whatever they have said. When we're talking about an 18-year-old, impulsiveness, it is there. It will be there because of the prefrontal cortex just growing or developing. But what can we do as parents when they are younger? So the first important step is emotional awareness. So the more I am able to be, clear with whatever I'm feeling, that is, I name it for myself, I can tame it, I can work with it. The thing is that we somewhere neglect that emotional awareness as children are growing up, because there is a lot of focus on the doing part in terms of, the achievements, the studies, the learning. You find a 5-year-old learning guitar, keyboard, dance, singing, and we are so focused on all that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But somewhere we miss out that the child is a human being who feels, who thinks, who is capable of, reflecting. So if we are able to give those tools to them as young as, 3, 4, start talking about their emotions, helping them to express what's going on, and also facilitating the thinking process for them. What we do normally is, if a 3-year-old, 4-year-old hits another child or pinches the child, what do we normally do as parents? We hit them back and we pinch them. And we say, look, how does it feel? Now you know how it feels. Now the child knows how it feels. But his brain has not developed enough to know what the other perspective is. So the child is thinking to himself, okay, next time I pinch this guy, I'm going to make sure you are not there. Right? So somewhere, because of our lack of awareness, we are giving the space for all this. Instead of sitting with the child and saying, hey, that sounds like you were angry, or what's going on with you? Children are very much in touch with their body. They know what's going on with them. And this is one example, because it was an aha moment for me. So this child was in one of our emotional awareness workshop, and he was running around, not sitting down. So we said, what's going on with you? So he said, I'm really angry. So we said, okay, you're feeling angry, and you have any reason? He said, I don't know, but I'm feeling really angry. So we said, where do you feel it in the body? He says, everywhere. So we said, okay, so what do you want us to do? How do we help you? So he said, okay, fine, and he paused. Now, please understand, the children are capable of thinking, right? So we also paused, and we gave him some time, and then he came back and he said, give me a glass of water. So we gave him a glass of water. He drank the glass of water, and then we said, okay, how are you feeling now? And he says, didn't work. So we are like, okay, so what do you want to do? Then I asked him, so when we work with kids, or even we work with adults, we make requests. So it is not that you do this or you do that. We say, would you be willing to try this out? Would you be willing to do this? So I asked him, I said, are you willing to hear a suggestion? He said, what? I said, maybe I could give you a lot of newspapers. You could, stand in the corner and tear. Maybe that would help. Are you open to that? And he thought about it. He said, yeah, okay. And he stood in the corner, believe me, for 10 minutes. He was tearing the newspaper. Rest of the kids are working. He's standing there tearing the newspaper. And he says, give me more. And after 10 minutes, he said, and then I said, how are you feeling now? How much is the anger? So we used the rate meter or whatever. He said, 0. And he joined the class. He finished his whole activity, and he went. Right? So for me, emotional awareness is like a miracle. It's like a magic. And that is the first step towards self-awareness itself. More than even my thought, I can feel it in my body. So for children, when they're growing up, if you're able to go through these steps, give them the tools to manage, then when they are teenagers, they will pause. Not all teenagers are impulsive. So some of them learn to pause. So if we are able to give those tools, we will have less number of children, working from that impulse, or being able to reflect and look at the pros and cons. So bottom up, we need to the core issues, if we address, then as they grow up, that will become less. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
just want to
Beautiful.
add a bit
Yeah.
to that, it's so true that, like we are not interested in validating emotions, even, for the youngest. So I have a 4-year-old boy who has come in for a vaccination and who is very scared because he knows he's going to get a shot. And the moment I give, he starts howling. And then immediately I have a parent who comes and says, how can you cry? You're a boy. You're 4 years old. Your baby sister who is 4 months old didn't cry. Are you a girl? So these are the kind of messages that we constantly give. And that's why we need to be really aware of what we are saying. And that's how the child develops also emotional awareness.
Thank you so much. I really loved the responses, and thank you for the question. Part of me is saying we need a 1-week workshop, not a one morning. How are we doing on time, Partha? When are we scheduled to close? 12:30. Okay, so we're good. Let's take more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I had a question on the parents themselves.
Okay.
So sometimes there is no unity among the parents in terms of how do we upbring a child. Maybe a father wants to bring in a particular way, the mother wants to bring in a different way. So how do we resolve this? Because in between the child is the one who, probably gets affected.
Absolutely.
My husband is in the audience, so I can't lie. So I'm a vegan, moving to be a raw vegan. My husband is a carnivore, as I call him. And I'm an atheist. My husband believes when it is convenient. So there are a lot of things like this. And I'm always talking about nutritious food. And he's like, the child needs to eat junk food also. He needs to enjoy. I grew up like this, and I had this, and I had that. I had so much fun and stuff like that, right? So there is not a thing on which my husband and I agree, except for the school that my child goes to. I told him this is the school he will go to, and I explained to him, he agreed. Otherwise, there is always conflict, right? Now, the thing is, to start with on the atheism bit, I've been one since I was 15, and, it's been a long journey. My child, we read to him everything. He knows about Durga Ma, he knows about Christianity, he knows about Buddha, he knows about everything. We talk about everything, and after that, we have a lot of conversations. One of the things that, just to leapfrog, there was this thing about what are the parenting challenges of the 21st century was one of the things that was given here. We don't have electronic media at home. My child is 6.5, he doesn't know to make a phone call. If there's a phone call, he can take it only on speaker. He doesn't even know to turn on the phone, right? Which means that there's a lot of conversations happening at home, right? There's a lot of activities happening in which my husband and I both spend a lot of time with him. So it also involves a lot of conversations and stuff like that. So one of the things that my husband and I have, as of now, agreed on is that we will expose the child to everything at whatever time and age appropriate for him. He will make the choices. So regarding nutrition, me being a vegan and him being a carnivore, so the middle point where we have come to is that my child will have eggs. And he will choose to eat meat or not when he's at an age to decide for himself what is good for him, right? So we tell him, sometimes, we talk about things, right? I tell him, why fruits and vegetables are good. And the father also tells him that we talk about, the cycle of life where the deer eats the grass, the lion eats the deer, and various other things that, so people or living beings around have to eat various other things to survive and to live, and to not be judgmental about somebody eating something. You cannot make a judgment saying, oh, that person eats meat, that's bad. And I'm not getting political about it. I'm just saying in a very general term. So this involves a lot of conversations between us both and also with the child to tell, what, this is what it is. Right now you can do this. So my child knows that I have vegan curd. My child has tried it out. There are days he'll tell me, Amma, I want your curd. And there are days he'll say, I want my milk curd. Your vegan curd, I don't like, right? So even at the age of 6, the most important thing is that, we tend to think of children as these little people who don't understand, right? And I'm not saying that you should treat them as adults all the time, but it helps to talk to them in a way that they will understand, to try to tell them. My child goes and tells everybody, my mother is a vegan. She will not eat this. He knows. And I'm super scared of snakes. He's an animal lover. At the age of 3, he knew about 350 animals. He'll look at an animal and he'll look at a bird and say, I think this is a red-capped kingfisher. He'll come up with his own names and stuff like that. I'm super scared of snakes. So when he sees something, he'll tell me, Amma, you don't see this. You know, one more thing, when we were talking about projecting our fears and things like that, I have a phobia. I start throwing up. I bodily react to anything snakes. And my child knows it. He will go to his father and ask about snakes. Initially, he didn't understand because I taught him so much that the mother was not talking about snakes. But when I explained, he understood. Now he says, Amma, when we go to a lot of zoos and museums, he says, Amma, don't come to the snake side. You stay, I'll go see and come. Or he goes and talks to his father and asks him about snakes and anacondas and serpents and stuff like that. That is because we've told the child in a way he can understand. So all the conflicts, the father talks about why meat is good. I talk about why fruits and vegetables are good. I talk about there's no God. I mean, nothing, there's no such thing as God, Surya. It's okay, it's fine. And the boy says, no, Amma, Durga Ma is so powerful. We have these conversations and we have these conflicts, and it's not easy. I think going back to being very mindful and saying, this is what I need to tell my child. I need to expose my child to all of this, and I need to talk. Nothing helps like conversations.
Lovely. Thank you for that. And what I'm hearing there is like a resonance of something that you had mentioned earlier. In every challenge, there's also an opportunity. And so, two parents, or it can be parents and grandparents, sometimes it's a family who raises a child, having difference of views and opinions, it need not be a wrong thing or a bad thing. There is an opportunity in that. In fact, since we are using the term conflict in the behavioral literature, we actually distinguish between different types of conflict. So there's something called task conflict and something called relationship conflict or emotional conflict. So task conflict is the difference of ideas and opinions on any matter. So in the corporate world, in fact, you're really trying to encourage task conflict in groups. Okay, and you do this by increasing diversity. So here, in your family, you have that naturally occurring diversity, and so you will have the task conflict. And this can also be an opportunity actually for the child to be exposed to different worldviews and perspectives and not have that blind conditioning that this is the only God, this is the only right way, this is the only thing to eat, right? The child is automatically seeing, oh, there are multiple ways, now let me design my own way. So I fully understand that the conflict can be emotional and it can lead to relationship conflict also, but it's an invitation to see those differences as an opportunity rather than...
Sure, she has handled it without any conflicting among themselves. That makes a lot of impact.
Okay. Should we take another question, or you want to? Okay, we'll get inputs from both of you and then move on. Quick inputs.
I think before we get to conflicts, I think the first thing is we should start talking. We should start having conversations. And I'm very curious when I go to a restaurant and I see this family, there are 2 kids and parents and each one of them on a phone. Everyone is glued to the phone. When the waiter comes, everyone get me this. And then they are back to the phone. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing today, especially with teenagers, because there's no opportunity to communicate, let alone resolving conflicts. Yeah. So I remember one of the places where I was speaking, and one of the things which I put up is start having dinner together. Use your dining table. Don't use it for dumping things, but use it for eating together, because that's a great opportunity for you. So start talking to each other. So once you start there, you will definitely get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just adding one point to it. When we talk about conflicts, I would work from the assumption that both the parents have the same need for their child. That is the well-being of the child, right? But we have different ways to reach there. So if we are aware that what the need is, the need is the same. Say for Partha and I, we both have the same need for our child, for our children, that their well-being, they need to be empowered. But the way we look at it might be different. Even for a small thing, say, I don't believe that coaching is very important till the child says, I want to go for it. But he may think that, yeah, it will help her to develop certain skills. So if we are looking at the strategy to meet the need, we will still find a midway somewhere. But if I'm looking at that strategy as the need itself, if I believe that no, she cannot go for coaching, then we are at loggerheads with each other. But if I'm willing to see, yes, it can be a resource which can help her, so now we leave it to the child, like, she mentioned that the choice is hers. So we have a child coming up and saying, we gave her enough time, and she came up and said that, you know what, I would like to go for this. I would like to take help on this. So the choice is hers and she takes full responsibility for it. So the differences are going to be there, but most of the time if you go beyond those differences, you see that the needs are the same.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's have maybe from that. Yeah, you have the mic. Sure.
So, kids live in an environment where they're always told what to do, what not to do, whether it is home, school, or outside. So is there an issue with the terminology children and adult? There's conflict that I see in, you said, honoring the child's knowing, vis-a-vis the decision-making brain, which takes about 23 or 24 years of age to grow. So I don't know how to settle that. The other thing that you mentioned about, if you let the child be, people would think that you're an indifferent parent, but you're actually intensely involved in every moment with the child. And then what happens to the child in you? If you do that, what happens to the child in you?
Okay.
Because I'm always at the loggerheads that, I'm always consumed by everything that our children need.
Okay, I can, yeah.
Yeah, there's another question.
Okay,
I believe, sorry. So this is one question. The other question is, I think parents are very selfish because they only see their child, and how that affects the value system that we build in our environment.
Okay, so, I'll just take the first two, and so the conflict, about, I think the first point you said is about honoring the child's knowing versus the teenager, right? So, so honoring the child's knowing is not the same as letting the child have his or her way, right? So let's say, for example, your teenager is, so when we're talking about the knowing, it's sort of, it's more along the lines of what she said, which both of you said actually, being, allowing the child to recognize that this is what I'm feeling, like I'm feeling angry, I'm tearing up the newspapers, right? We're not saying, please be angry, you're supposed to be angry or something, but you're allowing the child to connect with his reality of what he's experiencing in body, mind, system, soul at that point. And you're not invalidating. You're not saying, no, you're not angry, you're just having something else. So we're not, so it's like when a child says, I'm not hungry, or I am hungry. No, you're not hungry, or you are hungry. So that's invalidating, where the child's body, mind, system, which includes body, emotions, thought, is giving the child a certain experience. And we say, no, we sort of put that into a box and say, no, don't feel this, do as what I'm told. That's when the child starts cutting off his connection with his own experience and reality and starts saying, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. You can still allow the child to have that connection and then, make suggestions or whatever your ways of communicating with the child, then, guide the child about what is, whether you want to do the freewheeling on the road or something. So even a teenager who's having the raging emotions and all of that, allow the child to acknowledge that he's having those. And then you put in your suggestions, okay? So you, like the example of food that I gave. So you want the child, for example, to sit and eat. You can put that across as a request or whatever, but you don't you don't deny the child what his own body and emotions are telling him. So you don't disconnect that. So that's how I would reconcile that. I get more inputs, but I'll just take your, do you want to talk for, is it clear or should we go to point 2 or? Okay.
Honoring the child and not so much on the brain going till 23, 24. Because if you look at, I don't have the data.
No, they're not two different things, is what I'm saying.
Just make my point. I don't have the data, but I would want to know how many kids who don't go to school and farmers' kids who can't afford, how many of them commit suicide? I unfortunately don't have the data. So is it the brain that hasn't developed and hence because then they can't make same decisions, or is it something else? So I don't know whether I'm making sense
you want to take it? So my understanding from what they shared also in terms of the brain is, and you can correct me if this is wrong, it's not that we are saying, you know, the brain at that stage is really, they're going to be more tuned in, tapped in with the emotions. They're going to have those raging emotions, and that often happens because of hormones also. But they're not going to be disconnected from the emotions, and they can therefore, they have a better chance of managing their own emotions. But
I think
so that is,
it's not at all true that they are not connected to emotions. In fact, they react more from that standpoint. And when we look at neuroscience, or we look at the concept of neuroplasticity, I would say when the brain is taking that much time to mature, it's a time of opportunity for us. Because what happens is that this is the time where the neuronal connections are happening. And for the teenager, you know, they say what is fired gets wired together. So that's what happens to the teenager. So whether it is a child who is coming from a lower socioeconomic group or living in the cities, what fires them, that is what is going to stay with them. And as parents, that's the environment. All the people who are taking care of the teenagers, we provide that environment. And when we are validating a teenager's emotions, it doesn't mean that we agree with everything that they are doing. We are just, you know, when we speak about empathy, empathy fuels connection. And what is it that the parent wants? He or she wants to be connected to the teenager. So when you validate the teenager's emotions, you are expressing empathy, you are acknowledging the fact that the teenager is experiencing that particular emotion at that particular time. It doesn't mean that you are agreeing with them and you say that, okay, your brain is not developed, so I know that you are going to behave like this. But when it comes to a parent, it is more about what we call a collaborative parenting that we do when it comes to teenagers. Because you are going to give them freedom. So we say we provide latitude. That is, you give freedom within limits. There's a background of your own family values that you practice at home. There are certain things which you practice at home. And all these need to be conveyed to the teenager. It helps them to arrive at certain decisions on their own, rather than you're making decisions for them. That's how it works.
I'm just trying to understand your question. You are confused between, you know, when to allow them to think.
I lean on the fact that they should, you know, do everything on their own.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm now really concerned when I learn the science that, you know, if they are going to take such drastic decisions because of allowing them to do what they want to do.
Okay. So your worry comes from the thought that if you are allowing them to do whatever they want, whether it will lead to, you know, the integration of the brain may not happen. So when we say that you allow them to do what they want, what we say is there are always boundaries, right? So boundaries help them to feel safe. Boundaries help them to feel secure. So when we tell a child, okay, you give a field and you say, okay, run wherever you want, you will find that the child runs here and there and just stands in a place. The child will not be able to explore everything because he has worries and concerns about what will happen to him. Survival instinct is very high in children, right? Because it's the primitive brain. They work from the alert mode all the time. So giving them no boundaries is not really helping them. There is nothing called freedom. Freedom with responsibility. So what does that mean? If I'm riding on the road, there are boundaries. If I go to school, there are boundaries. How I take care of myself, how I take care of others. Even at Magic Eye, when we have sessions, the first thing that we work with is boundaries. So the main boundary is not to hurt ourselves or to hurt others. So what is it that we can do to hurt others, or what is it that we can do to support each other? So when the boundaries are clear, children feel more safe in sharing. So when we say no boundaries, then there is nothing to it. But when we set a boundary, if the child is going down to play, so we say, hey, this is the park, we would like you to be in the park, or where else would you be? So the child says, okay, I'll be in this park and I will be in this other area also. So the child knows where he is going to be safe and we know that he is going to be safe. So boundaries are something that are not talked about much, but they are important aspect of growing up. So as the child grows up, he sets boundaries for himself. Maybe I'll go to the pub, maybe I'll just have a drink, not more than that. So the child is willing to work within the boundaries, and he knows that he can choose to be safe.
And I'll, you'll share your points, but I see his puzzled face. And I just want to maybe this will help you in terms of, because I heard you when you said, I just want my child to be free, and should we have boundaries, right? So there are different ways of looking at boundaries, and maybe this is a good idea for you to look at how you've been looking at boundaries. So one way of looking at boundaries is like you play basketball. You have a court, there are rules of the game. You dribble, you don't kick the basketball on a football game. You put it in the basket, right? You don't run with the ball, and those are boundaries, and those are the rules of the game. You set it, the child understands it, you understand it, and you say we're going to have fun, as opposed to just, running in a field. At the same time, you're not telling the child that it is a bad thing to ever kick a ball, or you're not telling the child that the only way to run with a ball is to dribble, or that running with the ball is bad, right? So the way we can set boundaries and be very clear that we're just doing this for logistics. Like, we eat lunch at 1 o'clock because it works for us as a family, not because it's 1 o'clock, you're supposed to be hungry. If you're not feeling hungry at 1 o'clock, your body is wrong. You're screwed up. Sorry, you're your body is not working properly, because all bodies are supposed to feel hungry at 1. That would be invalidating the child's learning, right? We're saying we are eating lunch because, at 1 o'clock, because that's what works for us. So we are playing basketball today and we are playing football today. It's very different to putting a box around the child, a judgmental box, saying that if you don't play basketball, if you run with the ball, that's a bad thing to do. Nobody in our culture ever runs with the ball. You're only supposed to dribble the ball. Right? Nobody kicks a ball, because basketball is, if you kick the ball, it's a foul in basketball. So are you getting the idea? So that's what we mean. You can obviously use boundaries, and that's why we have rules. That's why we have the traffic laws and all. So the kid gets it, and the kid is happy to usually play with you. And that's the point I had when I said honoring the child's knowing, don't invalidate it. So if the child feels that, but I should be able to kick a ball and all. So you're not saying kicking a ball is a bad thing. You're saying in this court, in this country, or these are the rules. We don't do it because these are the rules of the game. I hope that clarified a bit.
I see the point that you're making. I'm just sorry for giving so much time. I grew up in an environment where there was no boundaries, and my parents had no boundaries. I'm sure a lot of parents in the past had no boundaries to ever 5 years. And I feel that because of that, I grew up, I became far more freedom. There was nothing.
So I don't know your reality, but I would assume it's very difficult, because we are not talking only about physical boundaries. We're talking about emotional, psychological. Like, I wouldn't know how to run a house without those boundaries, but she's been waiting. Maybe after her, you. And,
I see, from my experience, we have treated some of the cases who attempted suicide, and they get admitted in the hospital, and we counselors go and talk to them. When we talk to them, we understand that they were not given any options, and they were not able to realize the options which were there in front of us. This is what I get the feedback. And they felt that all the doors were closed, all the options were closed. And they were not being taken to the consequences if they had taken to that option or this option. So they were not able to discuss the options first, and they were not able to take them to guide them to the consequences if they go through when they take those options, and the support system. They were felt that insecure feeling of the support system also. This is what I felt when they were talking to the patients who attempted suicide and admitted in the hospital.
Thank you. And maybe we can take more of your other questions offline, and take one last question from another member. And
I'd just like to give a very small example of what you were trying to say. So when we talk about boundaries, for example, you have a 14-year-old, you have a daughter at home, and she says she wants to go and sleep over in a friend's house. What would you do in that situation? So as a parent, you would definitely ask certain questions, and you allow this 14-year-old to take a decision, but would you just say that I need to give my 14-year-old freedom, I'm just going to allow her to go? What would you do? Yeah, so please help me understand. Please help me understand what you would do in such a situation. So here the thing is that because she's 14 years old, and we know that she's also trying to establish her own identity, she's trying to explore other things. So at this point of time, as a parent, like she said, we are looking at the safety net. You want your adolescent to be safe. So there are certain questions that you're going to ask. Who is going to be there? Are the parents going to be there at home? Are there boys as well as girls? Is there going to be liquor? These are certain things that we need to ask today when we are sending our child for a sleepover with teenagers, because we see these things happening all the time. So that's what I meant when you say that you have boundaries. It's not that you are either just letting them go or you are restricting them and saying, no, you can't do it. So there is a midway that you can take, and that is what it's about, you know. So giving freedom within limits and giving freedom with responsibility, like she said. That's the key to it.
Thank you. Lovely. I was just told that we need to take the online questions, so if you want to read them out. You can use that mic.
I have a nearly...
So, the online question is, what is the importance of routines and structures at home? This question is by Mr. Roy Chowdhury. So, ma'am, you can take it. Yeah, it says, I struggle with my 7-year-old follow simple things like brushing, cleaning up after playing, putting things back, sleeping and eating on time, bathing. We always end up arguing and fighting over these. So what is the importance of routines and structures at home?
Okay. Who wants to take it?
I have a 6.5-year-old, so I think I'm almost that age and face a lot of this. See, the thing is, it's never easy. And all this routine and structure is not like it's going to work every day, every time. That's not going to happen. That's an ideal utopia no parent lives in, and no child will let you live in that utopia. But the point is consistency. And it goes back to, again, framework, boundaries, borders. The thing is, with my child, right from the beginning, we were like, you know, this is how it is going to be. This is how it has to be done. One day he screams, take the scream. Third day, fourth day. I mean, I think at some point we have to grind them down just as they grind us down. Like, you know, I was not a very patient person at all. I have learned patience from my child because that's the only way that it works with him, right? So a lot of things, I have done a lot of things. I don't know if it will help. Like recently, about 5-6 months ago, I made a huge chart for him, right? In that chart, from the time he wakes up to going to sleep at night, I do a lot of sketches. So I just did little cartoons saying, like, in the morning, you brush your teeth. There's a cartoon for brushing your own teeth, packing your own bag, walking, holding your parents' hand, going to school. When you come back, put your shoe inside, put your bag inside, eat your food, play, put things back, and put it inside. So there's this. And then if he does all of that, he gets a star. 50 stars, let go. If he doesn't do something on a day, no matter what happens, no. I mean, there is also something called delayed gratification. Instead of just giving everything. And I could have made it 100 stars for a Lego. It was just some random number that came to my head. I said, this has to be done. 2 things, consistency and being very firm. If you give in once for the screaming, the child knows that he screams another time, he's going to get away with it. Just be firm. And the third thing, there are times when they don't want to do it because they are hungry, they are sleepy, they are weepy, they are angry, they are upset and various other things. There are times when I say, like, no, I'm not going to put my toys aside. I say, okay, let me help you. Let's do it together. You know, we have to do it very fast because, you know, it's your sleeping time and you have to do this, but this putting away this toys is going to take half an hour and you will miss out. And then there is a tumble effect, right? If he doesn't have his food on time, he's going to be crankier. He's not going to sleep on time. So sometimes you have to get down and do it yourself. But the point is, reinforce the message again and again and again and again. I mean, whatever works. I mean, like what works with my child need not necessarily work with somebody else. But the point is the child needs to know that there are certain things on which there's no room for bargaining, negotiations and stuff like that. This has to be done. It has to be done. Be firm, keep telling and demonstrate. I cannot tell my child to pack up things and keep his stuff clean when I have my bedroom, you know, in disarray, when I have my kitchen in disarray. They learn from us, and going back to, you know, mimicking and stuff like that, I can't be one, I can't have things lying around and doing my own damn thing. And my child asks me, when I tell him, do not scream at me, he says, but you scream at your mother. Your mother is 71. Why do you scream at your mother? He asks me that. And then like he's always pointing the mirror at me saying like, look at how you behave and look at how you tell me to behave, right? So that is the thing. That's the key. I think it's worked with my child. And
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, this is a lovely question, and in fact, when we go through the panel, you'll find a variety of responses, right? So, and like she said, different things work for different, it's a logistics question, right? And you have to figure out what works for you, and again, what works with your kid at 3 might be different from what works when the kid is 7. My son is now 12, so what's working at 7 was different from what's working at 12. So, I mean, I've actually followed a fairly, I don't know how to pronounce this, laissez-faire approach in the sense, and a lot of my friends and family criticize me, and for the fact that we don't have routines and structures. I've not used them with my kid, with my son actually, but it's worked for us. And when I say it's worked, it's not obviously always worked. It does get our house into overwhelm or something like that. But we have other workarounds with it, right? So rather than having a routine or structure, for example, when he started going to school, I never have to tell him get ready on time or anything, because he realized very quickly that the school bus will not wait. And it's not a problem, because I've never been using the clock or watch to sort of tell him to do things, but it's something he's adapted. Again, am I sure it'll happen with all the kids? I don't know, but I have a lot of ease with going to school and things like that, because he's learned it. He's like, oh, this is how the world works. This bus is something that won't work, so I need to do it. With things like tidying up and stuff like that, frankly, it doesn't make me uncomfortable when things are messy. But when we have my parents visiting, or I'm now in my second marriage, and my new husband, who's my son's step-husband, likes the house tidy and organized. And so when he realizes the need for that, we started changing, and I started changing, and it's not out of compulsion, but it's more like a choice that, okay, this is how it's going to work here, because it helps people feel more at ease. And I place it more to him as an invitation. So it's like, what are the things that bother me because of not routine and structure? I think food is the place where I get triggered, because I don't, I want to cook at a certain time and I want to plan my day. So that's sort of where I convey to him that it becomes easier for me. Otherwise, you'll get cold food. If you want to eat when you want to eat, it'll get cold food, or I won't be making dosas, the dosas won't be crisp. So he sort of, he does his own negotiation and works out and says, sometimes he does choose, okay, mama, I'll come and eat when I want, you keep my food, I'll eat cold dosas. And for me, it's a big insult, because I used to have a label of dosa queen for myself. So for me, if dosas are not crisp and hot, it's such a wasted labor of love. But I've worked on myself, and he chooses cold, soggy dosa sometimes, and that's his choice, because he wants to eat at another time. So it's like this constant conversation, and it's working for me without a routine and structure. And when it comes to operating with the outside world, be it school, be it his step-parents, his grandparents, or my sister who has a total structure, and when we visit her on holidays, he sort of just seems to figure out that in this country or in this house, I need to do like this. And they're so smart that he creates his own routine. I'm not imposing anything on him, but that's, again, I think each one of us has to figure out what works, what is easier. And that might have something to do, and I'm sure there's a lot of self-work here for me also, and that might have something to do with our own temperament, because routines and structures don't work for me. A, why I don't work in the corporate world, okay? And if they don't work for me, A, creating it, and B, trying to impose it on my child. I did try it when he was a toddler and baby. It meant he was a disaster, B, I was a disaster, because it's not in my nature. I don't do it for myself, and then I have to impose it on him. It became too much to carry. So figure out, I would say, and let's see what the others have to do. I'm sure we'll get 5 different approaches here, right? But it will keep evolving.
The key to conscious and compassionate parenting is to have a structure but be flexible. So the way maybe I would work with, the way I have worked with my children is, okay, yeah, you need to have a bath. These were not, issues that we really focused on. So it depends on what is my focus of attention on. So is it on connection? Is it on building the bond with the child? Or is it on making sure that, they do what they need to be doing? So children find their own way of working out, and we need to be flexible. It's not like every day I get up in the morning and I want to do it the same way every day, right? There are some days, if it's a Sunday and I've been working the whole week, I don't even want to have a bath, and that's okay. So children, as they're growing up, they're going to go through different phases. Sometimes we think, okay, when we put them into these structures, it may help as they go into the future, when they go into their, they go to their whatever, hostels or whatever. But I've seen many kids who come from that structure and they just do the opposite. So, and there are children who have not been in a structure and they know how to manage things. So it depends on how each child takes in that structure. When he's able to see the benefits in it, if he knows, okay, I brush my teeth because it keeps my teeth clean, he will brush. But if he thinks that you are going to make him do it, he may not. Right now he may be, but later on he will not. And then as teenagers, I think most of us who have teenagers, we know that they do not want to have a bath at some point of time. And suddenly if there is a party, they are inside the washroom for maybe hours and you don't know what they're doing. So it is going to keep changing. Give them, I would say, be a little flexible. If you hold on too much to these things, you are trying to control. And where there is control, there is bound to be conflict. Even if it becomes a habit, there is going to be conflict. And we are more looking at a cooperative kind of parenting, and she said the beautiful word collaboration. So negotiating. So if the child says, I don't want to have a bath today, so we say, oh, would you be willing to have a bath in the evening? So we are negotiating, and the child also learns to negotiate, which is the plus point for the prefrontal cortex. That answers your question. So when you are constantly stimulating them to think, constantly stimulating them to make their own choices, giving them the, whatever little options you have, they learn to make their own decisions. They are ready to take that responsibility, and then they are ready to work with it. I hope that helps.
My question about selfishness was not answered.
Okay.
I think it's very, very...
Sure.
Okay, I'll it's a label. I don't think parents are selfish. We have our needs and we are trying to meet our needs. But when you put an adjective to it, I don't know what selfish means.
Yeah.
I miscommunicated.
Yeah, sorry.
So, the way we treat our children, we're very, very selfish about our children. And, the environment of selfishness is created at home through our parenting. And how that translates into the environment of selfishness in our society.
Okay.
So
Okay.
in the interest of time, because I'm getting signals to end, so what I'll do is, I think I would agree with you that selfish, it's a word. Okay, if you don't want to agree that it's a label, it's a word. It's an English word at the end of the day. And so we will all have our interpretations and definitions of what is selfish, right? Is it self-centered? Is it anchored in the self? Is it wanting, prioritizing the self over others? Does it mean not looking at the interests of others? Does not selfish mean not including you in the equation of your own life? Or can you include you in the equation of your own life and have other people included as well? So like you see, there are different ways to look at selfishness. So what I would suggest is we could just take this offline and we can continue the conversation. There won't be any one right answer. But again, on behalf of all of us, I thank you for showing up and having this beautiful discussion with us. Parenting is an ongoing journey. Like all journeys, it's not a destination. It's not about checkbox. I have become a conscious parent. I have become a great parent. It's about growing up, and as the kids are growing up, we continue to parent ourselves. Like she said, the child parents us, we parent ourselves. So again, parenting is an English word. At the end of the day, we are all just growing up together, growing up with these beautiful souls who chose us as their companions in their life's journeys, and whom we chose as companions in our own life's journey. And I think what all of us want is ease, joy, happiness on this journey. And so how can we be, I hate to use the word better, more mindful, conscious, I mean all of these, but we have to use words. So who or what can we be and do, and how can we conduct ourselves so we mess the other people up in our lives less, and we also make it a happier journey and more fulfilling for all of us involved, right? The children as well as the adults in terms of age. So thank you very much, and we can take more questions offline. Thank you to all the panelists for wonderfully sharing your time, and it was a enlightening experience for me. I really wish this had been a one-week retreat, and there's so much to learn from all of you, so thank you extremely for coming. Thank you.